Now, voters in the world's most locked down state are going to have their say in state politics at the polls in just under 3 months, 95 days to be precise. Aside from pandemic management, one other big issue playing out in Victoria is transport versus health. The opposition leader Matthew Guy has promised to dump Labor's promised Suburban Rail Loop, redirecting billions, tens of billions, to hospitals instead. Premier Daniel Andrews was on the offensive again today, taking a dig at both the Libs and also the Greens.
It's not a choice between rail and hospitals, it's a choice between Labor and Liberal. Investment or cuts. Now, I'd probably want to listen to engineers and transport experts rather than Green political party members. With the greatest of respect, they are in the grandstands. They are commentators. They are onlookers, voyeurs almost. They don't build anything. It's only Labor governments that get on and build stuff. Hospitals and schools. Hospitals and rail projects.
Let's bring in long-time Victorian and federal political analyst John Ferguson, who's Associate Editor at the Australian newspaper. Good to talk to you, Ferg. That's interesting, just in that grab there, that Daniel Andrews is having a go at the Greens as much as the Libs, because as you wrote on the weekend, he's bound to lose seats, and he might lose more to Greens and Teal-type candidates than the Liberals.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Chris. I think what we're going to see is there'll be a pushback against Daniel Andrews and his government. I think they will lose seats. It's a question of how many. And I think with the state of the Liberal Party in Victoria, which is not travelling that strongly, you may well see a significant number of seats fall to the Greens and potentially the Teals.
A lot can change in 3 months, I suppose, but there's been consistent polling for a long while, and despite all sorts of political controversies and Melbourne being the longest lockdown city in the world, all the expectations are that Daniel Andrews will survive and win the election in some shape or form?
Well, look, I think as politics is all about numbers, 88-seat lower house, 55 Labor seats. Are they really going to, and the coalition needs to win 18 seats to gain a majority, a slim majority. I think most people on the current polling think that won't happen. But I'm one that thinks, and I'm a little bit probably sort of more, and have been for some time, I still think there's great possibility there will be a big swing, anti-Labor swing, given what Victorians went through over the last, I suppose, couple of years or so, isn't it?
Yeah, and possibly then a parliament where the Greens and independents hold the balance of power. Tell us about the Libs. They've had a pretty troubled period, trouble with their leadership, been weak on issues here and there. But this big plan to scrap the Suburban Rail link, divert those resources into hospitals and health, is that a game changer, or will that not be the main discussion point through to election day?
Well, it's a really interesting one, because basically what the Victorian Liberal Party has done is copy what Peter Malinauskas did in South Australia in March. And now Malinauskas basically decided he wouldn't spend $600 million or so on what was dubbed a basketball stadium. The Libs are talking about billions in Victoria now and putting into health. I think it'll work. I think people are really worried about health. I rode past St Vincent's Hospital on the weekend, and to see those makeshift marquees outside to help treat people and, I suppose, triage them. We've lived through a pretty astonishing period in our national history, and I think that the Libs targeting health is sensible policy. But the question is, do people have faith? Do they have trust in, but firstly, the Liberal Party's ability to win the election, and the second, to keep a cohesive and present a unified, confident outfit. And I'm not sure that a majority of people will think that way.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point. You say it is basically a carbon copy of the Peter Malinauskas Labor policy in the South Australian election on steroids by the Libs in Victoria. It could be very, very compelling. Thanks for that update, Ferg. We'll try and keep in touch as the election draws near. John Ferguson,
look forward to that, Chris.
John Ferguson there. You can read his stuff in The Australian every day.